Okay, now we are live. Ed, don't say anything
Please
stupid.
do not swear. That cannot be guaranteed.
Hello and happy Friday. Welcome to the National Snow Show Facebook page. My name is Tord, and again, I'm joined by an awesome guest. This time it is former World Cup ski racer and Olympian, Mr. Ed Drake. Welcome, Ed. How you doing, mate?
Living the dream, mate. Living the
dream.
Living the lockdown dream.
Happy Friday.
Yeah, I don't know what day of the week is. Could be Monday morning for all I know.
That sounds about right, doesn't it? Okay, so we're going to have people kind of coming in, hopefully, during the chat. We're just going to have a not quick chat. We've got as long as we want, really.
You told me this was like 2 minutes long, Todd.
It might be a bit longer than that. So anyway, for those who don't know who you are, which, I mean, where have they been? Under a rock? You've had a pretty eclectic career. So you're a 4 times British alpine champion. You spent a decade, give or take, on the British team. So that was across Europa Cup and World Cup. And then you represented Team GB at the Vancouver Olympics in 2016 in downhill. 2010 even.
Even longer ago.
2010 downhill, Super G, giant slalom, and combined.
Yes.
You packed it all in. And then in 2013, I should have noticed this on my notes, but it wasn't. You switched from alpine skiing to ski across, and then unfortunately narrowly missed out on the Sochi Olympics. Nowadays, you commentate on Eurosport, you coach aspiring athletes, you run the ski racing podcast and present the ski racing podcast extra on YouTube, along with a very dodgy looking co-presenter.
Who's that?
Yeah. Yeah, like, really cool to have you along, and hopefully we can get some insight from like how it is to be an alpine skier professionally, and then also we're going to touch upon the world champs and Dave Riding obviously coming up on Sunday, so we'll come to that. And if anyone has any questions, chuck them in the comment section. I will do my best to ask Ed. So let's just start, like, when did you first get that skiing bug? Like, what was the first thing?
Well, I started when I was 3, just on holiday with my parents in France. We apparently I used to hate going to the creche, and mum and dad said when I could ski, I didn't have to go to creche anymore. So that was it. I think that was, so it's all down to them. But yeah, and then I think I don't remember it, but I've got an old coach and old house mother, Shirley Stevens, who still kicks around Facebook. So if we see Shirley, nice to chat to you. But
Brilliant.
And she said that at 6 years old, I said I wanted to go to the Olympics. So I was pretty hooked pretty early, and the rest is history, let's say.
Awesome. And like, when you started, especially like started alpine skiing and kind of competing, who was the ones you were looking up to? Who were your kind of idols?
From like a British perspective, it was the Bell brothers. They were always obviously, very big within British skiing, obviously. But also Tomba, I grew up as a youngster. My first memories of racing were, Alberto Tomba, Peekaboo Street, Yuri Kajir, that sort of era, late, sort of mid and late 90s. And just like, I think that era of sport in general, those guys are just ballers. Guys, girls, guys as in athletes, just ballers, weren't they? Just living the dream, fast cars.
Proper rock and roll, right?
Yeah, exactly. Something now, sport nowadays is so professional. There's so much money involved. It's so much science involved in sport nowadays that you just I don't think you get that kind of, I don't know, laissez-faire attitude to it all, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, Tomba's definitely one of my heroes for, I think, more the off-slope antics than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the last time when we were speaking to Katie Ormerod, Graham Bell did join us on the chat. So hopefully we might get some comments. I'm sure he's having a few frosty beers on a Friday, so maybe he'll join us.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Graham's in pretty good shape. I don't know if he doesn't drink as much as we think he does. Maybe it's all a front.
Maybe it is. And like, you then kind of, carried on your career and it took you everywhere, really, didn't it? Like, what's the kind of proudest moment that stands out to you in your skiing career?
I don't know. I've got a few, you know, personal to me in terms of, you know, other people might not rate them as an achievement, but getting to go to the Olympic Games was huge. I obviously didn't sort of reach the peaks that I wanted to or had aspired to, but getting to the Olympic Games is something only few people can tick off a bucket list. So for me, that's the biggest. But also podium in Europa Cup, skiing and like racing World Cup downhill, skiing in Wengen, jumping the Hunchoff, skiing down the Stahlhang, you know, doing the camels in Val Gardena, all of that sort of stuff are more personal to me in terms of, you know, what I rate as from watching as a kid to actually being able to do a lot of things that I grew up watching and sort of in awe of, and to be able to go and do those sort of things. Those are the big moments for me. Going to, you know, major championships and stuff are always nice. Picking up British titles and stuff is always nice. But I think it's the sort of crowning moments of Olympic Games and World Cup podium, Europa Cup podiums.
Yeah, massive, isn't it? And we've actually got a question in, but I'm gonna keep an eye on these questions because some of them are related to what we're talking about. Tracy Hill is wondering, did you ever ski on dry slope? She said that was our starting point, but as adults and our kids loved skiing too from an early age, which is awesome. What advice do you have about dry slope?
I skied so much dry slope. I probably skied dry slope more than I did snow in terms of time on dry slope. That's actually how I got into racing. You know, I did a lot of skiing in France and when I was a kid and all that sort of stuff. But I really got into racing. Mum took me and my older brother James on an inset day to Hillingdon before it was burnt down by the gypsies over in Uxbridge, and it was and we were just free skiing. You know, what do you do on an inset day? Mum thought just anything to keep these kids quiet and took us to Hillingdon dry ski slope, and it just so happened that there was a one of the workers there saw me and my brother skiing up and down and said, you know, have you ever thought about joining the race club? We've got a race team. And not because I was like setting the world alight or anything, but just I could ski, and Hillingdon had a race team and I was young, and they thought, you know, and so and dry slope came in from there. But after that we were skiing. We were through the summer. The calendar is thick and fast, comes pretty much every weekend, and we raced every weekend. We did, and if we weren't racing at the weekend, we were training at the weekend. We were training midweek, you know, doing a couple of days a week. So I think dry slope, especially for a Brit, it plays a huge part. You look at somebody like Dave Riding, he spent more time than most people in the dry slope. I think I did a lot. He did a lot. Yeah. But you look at somebody like Dave and how instinctive he is now on his skis, because he's done a million turns round gates, and a lot of those are done maybe in 10-second stints down Pendle, but they're still done, and you still learn recovery skills, you still learn how to stand on your skis, you still learn how to generate speed. Yeah, of course it's on dry slope, not snow, but I think it's a really good way of getting involved in the sport and not having to spend a fortune, which, let's face it, in skiing you have to spend a few quid if you want to be good, and which is a bit of a shame, but that's the sport.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I've also raced on dry slope all over the place, and you always get some good weather, don't you? I always feel like
it's easy to take the good, you know, when it's pissing down with rain. It's all like, it's one of those where you go, I don't really want to do it, but then you're like, yeah, but it's really going to be really fast today on the dry slope. Yeah. It's going to be really good. And so you end up out there in your waterproof trousers, getting drenched every time you hit a gate, you know. But you know, I had some great times. I raced against Eddie the Eagle as a kid. I was 12, and I was sponsored by, at that point we'd moved from Hillingdon to High Wycombe, and High Wycombe did a charity event. And you bid for your celebrities. I'm going to say, you know, the dreaded inverted commas celebrities, because I was a celebrity at 12 years old. So there's a group of people. The Bell, I think I'm not sure if it was Martin as well as Graham, but Graham was there. Malcolm Erskine was there. Eddie the Eagle, and I think there were some other people there as well that were ex-racers. I can't remember fully, but so the team came in. At that point, I was sponsored by Rossignol, and Rossignol were bidding they actually bid for your celebrity, and that's how they raised some cash, and then you race head to head with your teams. And I raced. Rossignol bought me, I think for 150 quid. I was quite proud of that, and I think back as a 12-year-old, and it was brilliant. I got to meet some loads. Eddie the Eagle, raced against Eddie the Eagle.
There you go, biggest celeb in British skiing. So you were, as we said before, you spent over a decade with the British team, including on the World Cup tour. Like, explain to us what it's like to be on that World Cup tour with the Austrians, the Italians, the Americans, all of these massive names. You must have raced at the same time as some huge names.
Yeah.
What's it like? That first race must be pretty exciting.
My first World Cup was Wengen, the downhill, and I don't know if we're racing World Cup as as somebody from a small nation is very interesting, and because you're a loner. I mean, I raced my first World Cup. I don't think were there any other Brits racing? Maybe Dougie Crawford was racing with me. I can't quite remember. Just self-centered is all about me. I can't remember who else was there. But it's mega. Like, you are surrounded by, I'm on course inspection with Bodie Miller, and you're sort of like trying not to be starstruck by, one of the biggest names in ski racing, or Benny Reich or something like that. And you're kind of just cruising around, but it's tricky. Being from a small nation is really tricky because you don't have the might around you. You don't have a big team. You don't have all the coaches. I mean, that's not me playing a sob story. That's just the reality of it. And of course, as an entry-level World Cupper, you don't warrant a huge team around you because you are a newbie. So, but it can be quite a lonely place. But at the same time, it's not, because you are a family. Everybody that races World Cup are, you kind of feel like you're in it together, because especially as a downhiller, it's a bit more dangerous, a bit more sort of on the edge. So you kind of in that family, but at the same time, as a newbie there, it's a strange place, but at the same time, loved it.
Yeah. And that's the main
Really
thing,
did.
right?
Yeah.
And after you did all that, I mean, you did the Olympics 2010, 2013 you moved into ski across, which is, I mean, you said the downhill's on the edge, but ski across is a wild sport.
Sorry.
Go for it.
No, I was going to say that it's a different type of danger, though. I mean, I don't necessarily think one is necessarily more dangerous than the other. Downhill, you're doing 90 miles an hour over some big jumps on some rock hard icy snow, but you're on your own. So anything that happens to you tends to be of your own doing. Whereas ski cross, you're only doing sort of 50, 60 miles an hour, but you're jumping higher but shorter. The snow is much more forgiving. You're not on an injected race piece very often, but you are still at the sort of mercy of what other people around you are doing. So it's slightly different type of danger. I could be on the most perfect line and be in a very stable, solid position, and somebody comes in and just sideswipes you, and all of a sudden you're, upside down heading towards the nets. And in a blink of an eye, and you've got no idea what happened. So it's quite different, but at the same time, one of my ski cross was brilliant because what it did do is reminded me of being a kid. Alpine is and was, even when I was racing, very, it's a very serious environment. It's, a very professional environment, as you can well imagine. But at the same time, when I was racing ski cross, it was sort of only just really entering that sort of professionalism. It was only really entering, that sort of very serious business, as opposed to a sort of more fun sport, for want of a better phrase. But it reminded me of being a kid. It was like, at the end of training, when I used to ski with BSA when I was a kid, at the end of training, you'd pick up your backpacks and you'd race from the bottom of the training course to the van, and last one to the van had to do something stupid. I can't even remember what, something probably disgusting at the same time. And that was what it was like. And it kind of reminded me what skiing around with your mates is. So you get to the bottom of a ski cross track, as long as nobody's done something ridiculously stupid and dangerous in terms of like a bad decision that's put other people in jeopardy, you get to the bottom and it's like everybody's looking around sort of, it's a little bit OTT sometimes, but the high-fiving or the fist bumps or stuff like that. But you kind of feel like you get to the bottom with the biggest smile on your face, and you're sort of again in another little family. So and I think it's probably moved more towards the alpine in terms of the professionalism with it, which I think is only natural with something that's as exciting as ski cross, that it's going to keep going in that direction as more money comes in, which means more people come in, which means more team members come, all that sort of stuff, and just escalates up to more professionalism.
And we've just had a question come through. What made you switch across?
It's a bit more tricky, that one. I talked about it a bit when I retired from Alpine. I went through a bit more of a tough end of my Alpine career. I kind of struggled with what I was doing there. I kind of lost the love for it, let's say, and I sort of through the summer that I retired. I think I ended up retiring at the end of the winter, but the previous sort of summer, I was sort of struggling with it a little bit. What was I doing? I was sort of late 20s, trying to work out what I was doing next. And it's something I'm very passionate about now, is helping athletes build for post ski racing, because the end of my ski racing, where I should have been at my peak, I was so worried about what I was going to do next that I wasn't able to focus on ski racing. I wasn't able to focus on going faster, which is all I should have been focusing on in the peak of my career, my late 20s. As the downhill, I should have been moving into my, golden era, for want of a better phrase. But I was so busy worrying about what I was going to do afterwards. I really struggled with that. And at that time, it was, the federation had just gone bust before the Olympics. So everything was up in the air. Funding had been cut. There was no funding for the downhill program. So I was spending quite a lot of money racing. And that sort of compounded that's nobody's fault. I mean, I'm sure it is somebody's fault if you dig deep enough in terms of having no cash there. But, ultimately, it's come to light a bit over the recent few weeks, but I don't blame anybody from the federation, really, certainly the current federation for the situation that I was in, but then it was the reality of the situation. It was costing me money to do it. And I was worrying, thinking about what's happening next and spending a lot of money whilst racing in something that I was uneasy about doing because of the money, because of the, coming towards the end of my career or thinking about the end of my career. Like, I just really struggled with that. And then, so I didn't do an awful lot of racing because I was trying to figure out what was going on. And then I ended up, I thought I was sort of okay. And I figured that I wanted to keep going, got to the end of the season. And because I hadn't done very much racing, I wasn't selected for the team again, even though I had my points from the last races were quite good, but I hadn't done an awful lot of racing. So I was dropped from the team, which really shook me. And then I sort of wanted to carry on Alpine. So I went on it on my own as not part of the ski team. And then I went to do a race, a Super G race near Reiterau, where I picked up my best result in Europa Cup. And they cancelled it. I'd driven across from France. I'd been training with some friends, drove across from France to Austria, cancelled the race the night before the race. And it's just, just one of those moments where you're just like in the doldrums, like, right, this was going to be really good. I've trained hard over, the bits and pieces I could pick up on the circuit on my own. Like, I've come to a place where it should have been a good result. And then the race got cancelled. And I was just driving back to France. I was staying with a friend of mine, Craig Robinson, who used to race ski cross a few years before I switched. And he was like, look, there's a World Cup ski cross over in Megève. Why don't you just do that? Like, there's no Alpine races. And I was just like, do you know what? I'm going to do it. I was on the phone to Ian Finley, driving across, hands-free, driving across back to France. And I was like, Ian, can you sort me out a FIS license, a ski cross FIS license? I want to go and race the World Cup in Megève. And Ian sorted it out. The federation switched my FIS license to a freestyle FIS license. I went to Megève, did the training runs, had a laugh, did the qualification run, landed on my head, and loved it. And that was it. I was like, well, I've got no support on the Alpine side. I've got no support on the ski cross side. I'm just going to do this. This seems like fun.
Awesome.
And that was it. Yeah.
That's so
sorry, a long-winded
awesome.
a long-winded story about how I switched. I probably delved into a few things that were probably not on the question, the person who asked the question's mind, but
but you answered it.
yeah, in a long way. I do like talking, so
yeah. I mean, we all know that. And talking of which, great segue, by the way. So in 2016, you retired after just narrowly missing qualification into the Sochi Olympics.
Yeah.
You then moved into commentating for Eurosport, which you'd done a little bit before with, and you now run the ski racing podcast and lots of other things. It's really interesting, right? Because with commentating, I hear and see this all the time on Facebook. Everyone thinks that they can do it themselves, and loads of people wonder how it is, and they're like, "Oh, wow, they're rubbish. I mean, I can do a better job." Can you give us an insight? Give us an insight what it's like to commentate with. I think he'd like to be called the voice of ski racing, Nick Fellows, who does a great job. You normally work with him. Yeah, give us an insight to how that is to work with Eurosport and especially during these times.
Well, firstly, I love it. I love it, and it's certainly harder than people give you credit for. I think, not trying to big up my own ego or anything, but and what is interesting is when you listen to, as a fan of ski racing, when I've listened to Nick or Matt Chilton talking ski racing, and you hear, and of course you're going to hear the same phrases because you're talking about the same sort of stuff, race to race, a GS to the next GS. Of course, you're going to end up talking about the same stuff. So when you hear like a certain phrase that you hear Nick or Matt talk about, all of a sudden you're like, it reminds me of a kid. And then all of a sudden you have to like snap back out of it. And you're like, I'm supposed to say something next. I'm supposed to sound insightful and know what I'm talking about and try and not get overexcited, which I got accused of a couple of times. When Dave picked up his first podium, I love that I can say first podium now as well, by the way. But when Dave picked up his first podium in Kitzbühel, 2017, I believe it was, Nick and I were fortunate enough to be in Kitzbühel. And so we were watching Dave. So the commentary huts, again, I'm going to talk for a little bit here, sorry. The commentary huts are, if you're looking up the mountain at the bottom of the downhill finish, the commentary huts are all on the left-hand side. And so the finish of the downhill happens in sort of just in front of you, but the slalom pitch is sort of across the other side of the finish area. So you can't really see the finish that well. I mean, you can see it obviously, but you can't, you're not on top of it like you are in the downhill. And on inspection, we were there, like Nick and I have, the British Eurosport got given one pass. So Nick did the course inspection on the first run, and I did the second run, or the other way around. I think it was that way around. And so like you get to go on a hill. Dave was leading after the first run, which was insane. And you're surrounded by these other commentary booths. At the same time, I was at this race. It so happened that a load of my old racing buddies were there as well. Andy Noble, who went to the Olympics, was there. Mark Telling, who I grew up ski racing, he'd come over to watch. Nick Palmer had come out from Scotland to come and watch. Jan Kachowski was there. And we were just like this, those guys were there. And I was in the commentary box. Dave was leading the first run. I remember speaking to for Dave and a couple of other mates who used to know who were in that race watching it. And then the second run comes on, and I'm just sort of, Nick and I sitting in this booth, and you can imagine it's not very big. So it's just enough for two people. And you've got your desk, you've got your computer screens, you've got your microphones, you've got your Perspex screen in front of you, but either side of you are other commentary boxes. We've got the Germans on one side, the French on the other, and you've got walls, but there's a Perspex gap at the front where you can sort of lean forward and you can see your co-commentators from the other countries. And they said all you could hear was me and Nick losing our minds while Dave was skiing down. And I'm like, not sitting down. The Germans have shoved their microphones through into Nick and mine's booth so they can hear Nick and I. And I was not, Nick was professional. He was carrying on commentating. I was not commentating. I was cheerleading. I was just, you can find the clip on YouTube. I'm just screaming, come on, Dave. Got no interest in what's going on other than just cheerleading, full pom-poms out and everything. And then he crosses the line and comes in and gets himself a medal. And the guys on the other side, all the commentary booths are just banging on the side of it, going absolutely ballistic. And to have and then, Nick's doing the roundup and I'm just waiting to get off my chair so I can just go to the medal ceremony and stuff. And it was mega. And to be a part of it, not a part of Dave's success, because that's nothing to do with me, but to be a part of that day and be there and feel like you've got some sort of, I don't know, not interest in it, but to be a part of it in some small, tiny way of being able to be there and commentating on was just brilliant.
And your the clip, if people are wondering, did go viral. It went quite big in America. They picked up your commentary and in a very good way, not in a mocking way at all. They just thought it was awesome.
I got sent the link by an old dry slope ski racing friend of mine. And he dropped me this link afterwards, and he was like, "Here, have a listen to this." And I think it must have been a podcast, or but those days it was a really early sort of podcast. And he's like, "Tune in to however long through it was," and I'm listening to it, and he's like, I'm not going to do the accent properly because I didn't embarrass myself. But he's like, "Oh my God, did you hear that British commentator? The co-commentator was just losing his beep about his buddy coming on the podium. That was a
It's brilliant. Brilliant.
Cheerleader, not commentator, cheerleader that day.
Yeah, and I mean, as you are, we all know you are basically a mega fan, super fan of Dave's. I mean, you're there. If you could marry him, you probably would.
Potentially not far, but yeah, close. Man, I'd give Mandy a good fight.
Yeah, exactly. He is, if you don't know, audience watching, he is racing on Sunday. So the world champs have been going on in Cortina. And Dave it's basically like the equivalent of the 100 meters in the Olympics. They close the show, the championships with the slalom on Sunday. I mean, let's first talk about what his chances might be. And then maybe you could touch upon and you kind of already have spoken about it, but people might be tuning in a bit later. What makes his skiing so unique? Obviously, you spoke about dry slope, but yeah, I mean, if you can kind of take us through those two.
It's Dave's chances. I mean, we spoke about it on the podcast the other, whatever it was, yesterday, day before yesterday. And the thing is with tech, especially, the margins are incredibly tight margins. And so I think any of that top group, probably any of the top 20 on their day, have a chance of winning a medal. And that's not me blowing smoke up, up Dave or whatever, because he's in there. He's earned that sort of shout of a medal over the last few years. He's probably one of the most consistent men on the World Cup tour. He's super solid in his technique. He sometimes struggles, and he's open with it himself. He sometimes struggles with sort of that the difference between going all out and getting to the finish. And I think that comes with years of trying to break into the World Cup elite. So the way it works in terms of World Cup points and therefore your bib numbers means that you need to accrue quite a lot of points to be able to get yourself those bib numbers. It's not a case of, skiing in the top 30 2 or 3 times. You need to be in the top 30 10 plus times, unless you're in the top 5, let's say. So that consistency of finishing and picking up points is crucial. Otherwise, you just don't get there. How many times do we see somebody that's incredibly talented, gets up towards the sharp end, has a 5th or better position, and then falls away? Just that consistency isn't there, and then all of a sudden they're dropping outside the 30 because they come in quickly and they leave quickly. So Dave's worked incredibly hard on that consistency, and now almost sometimes becomes a bit of a sucker for that, because that's how he's known his skiing for so long. That finishing and scoring points is so crucial. But he's been working incredibly hard on trying to find the balance between going crazy and risking everything to win, which you need to risk everything if you're going to win, because they're so good, right? The best and the best are so good. So he's got a really good shout. We've seen winning a World Cup is incredibly difficult, and it's only one day in terms of that race. But world champs seem to, it's almost the Olympics in terms of like it really is one day. It's one day for the world champs. It's one day every 2 years. For Olympics, one day every 4 years. So you saw it today with the GS. Gianni Prandini I can't even remember if he scored. I think he might have podiumed in World Cup before, but I can't remember it. But he picked up a podium today. Matteo Fevre, who won today, Pantero fell over, but Matteo Fevre, who won today, has been nowhere all season. Not to say that he's not a good skier, because he's won World Cups before and he's been incredibly fast before, but he's been nowhere this season. He picks up the parallel win and he picks up the GS win today. And so all of a sudden you're like, it's one day, it's a major championships, and anything can happen. Do you know what I mean? So he's got a really good shot if he can, as long as he's feeling fit and healthy when he goes into it, and he can risk everything. Like I say, cliche, but it's 2 runs and it's one day.
Yeah, and for those who, again, just to repeat, it's on Eurosport on Sunday. I think first run. Do you know when that is, Ed? Is it 10 a.m.?
I assume the ladies today the men today, sorry, was 9 o'clock first run. So I assume it's probably going to be. I assume it will be 9 o'clock again, but I haven't looked at the timing.
And everyone should get their pom poms out and cheerlead Dave.
Oh yeah. Don't forget, Charlie Guest will be racing in the slalom as well tomorrow, Saturday. So she'll be racing, and she's picked up World Cup points this season. So let's hope that she can do the business on the ladies' side too.
Yeah, a brilliant skier. And with that in mind, who you obviously keep your eye on the ski racing game a lot. Who do you see as like a real up and coming skier that we should keep an eye on, both from a UK perspective and international?
UK perspective, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to look past Laurie Taylor and Billy Morgan. Billy Major. That's what I said, wasn't it?
Not Billy Morgan.
Billy Major.
Granted,
sorry.
Great snowboarder, but terrible.
Rubbish at slalom. Sorry, Mr. Major. But yeah, he won a Europa Cup day before yesterday. I can't think of what day of the week it is again. He's been skiing incredibly fast. Him and Laurie are 1 and 2, I believe, in the Europa Cup standings. So those boys are absolutely flying. You've got Sarah Woodward, who skis speed, who dipped her toe into the World Championship pool in the team event a couple of days ago. She's skiing really well. Owen Vinter, if I'm looking at speed side of things, as with my speed sort of pom-poms out, if you like, as you said that earlier, he's been going great guns in sort of the FIS races and looking at World Juniors hopefully coming up soon and stuff like that. So those boys are going really well. On an international side, do you know what? I think it's quite difficult to see these international guys, because some of them like burst onto the scene a little bit later, but feel like they should be young, but they're not young, and likewise the other way around. But you look at some of the talent that Austria are pushing through at the moment, Fabio Gastrein in World Cup slalom, or you've got some of the Swedish boys coming through, Jakobsen, who's not that young, but he's like exciting talent to keep your eye on at the moment, because you can't move for the guy making crazy recoveries and mistakes and stuff. But some really exciting stuff going on in World Cup, both on the men's and the women's side at the moment. Michaela Schifrin all of a sudden found some form. She's been dipping up and down all winter long, showing us runs of pure Schifrin class, and then making uncharacteristic mistakes, turns up to world champs, put the Super G skis on for the first time since last season, because she said she didn't really train any over the summer, hasn't done any speed World Cups all year, comes up third in the women's Super G. Insane. Annoys me how talented some people are, by the way. It really does.
But I mean, that's really cool. And for those who haven't listened or watched the YouTube channel,
where have you been?
Aggression always gets more viewers, is what I find.
I did try that on the latest one, talking about that blooming parallel world champ. So
yeah, we're not going to go down that. That's a rabbit hole. We'll never get out. We'll lose all of our viewers. Tell us really, really briefly, in Ed Drake briefness, about the Ski Racing Podcast and the Ski Racing Podcast Extra.
So the podcast, I have been doing now for this is our third season. Ben Clark is my lovely sidekick, which he loves that term. And Marcel Mathis, former World Cup Austrian podium ski racer, world championship team medalist. I can't remember where they came, and I didn't realize that until we talked about it on the podcast the other day when I told him that Austria don't take it very seriously, and he was like, "Hey, I got a medal from that one." I was like, "Okay, sorry." So yeah, for the podcast, we meet weekly most of the time after every World Cup, sort of reviewing the action, talking about any points that have cropped up, and I set up a predictions league. So every week, the races, you can pick your winner. If your winner wins, you get 5 points, 3 points, and 1 point if they get on the podium. So I don't know. It's just a fun way of me engaging with other people that love ski racing, and we're growing nicely. It's been really fun. We haven't listened yet. Go check it out. And the extra, I kind of just thought that ski racing was missing a match of the day type thing. And so when you and I spoke about it, I was like, look, this is what I want to do. I want to be on screen analyzing some stuff, showing people where the winners made their time, where any crazy stuff went on, and we can look at why it didn't work out for some. And it just sort of spurred from there. Like it was fun. It's really fun. I mean, we haven't done it. We need to do another extra. We need to do another extra.
And they obviously, you can find the podcast on all of the podcast platforms.
Everywhere, mate.
And YouTube, obviously just search the Ski Racing Podcast Extra. The Predictions League is on your website, which is theskiracingpodcast.com. Now, on your podcast, you do a feature called Get to Know the Guest.
Yes.
And guess what we're going to do? We're going to play Get to Know Ed.
I don't like being the guest.
I know, you like mocking everybody else, so this is now going to be my turn to mock you for your answers.
All right, let's do it.
And I have taken exactly the same questions as you ask.
Okay.
So, first question: where is your favourite place to ski?
My favourite place to ski is Morzine in France, mostly because that was where I used to go skiing a lot as a kid. So, it's skiing for me now is about who you do it with and where you do it. It's not about, the actual sliding down snow, I can now take or leave, I think. Fortunate enough to have skied more than my fair share, no doubt. But so the actual sort of sliding around, I don't need to do that so much anymore. But skiing with people and hanging out with people in the mountains, I can't give that up. And to go back to somewhere like Morzine is definitely where I'd choose if I was to go on a break with some buddies.
There you go. And just before we continue with more questions, if you do want to track any questions towards Ed, just comment them and I will see him and ask him. If you could ski with anyone for a day, who would that be?
Tomba.
You'd spend the evening as well with him, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I wouldn't leave his side. I would chain myself to that man and follow him everywhere he went, because the skiing would be incredible. The food would be insane. The beers would be top notch, and the rest you can leave to your own imagination.
There you go. And on that, good segue to favourite place to après.
Kitzbühel's pretty good. The Londoner is excellent. All the follies are incredible. The Ronnie is brilliant. I think I'd probably stick my neck out and go with the folly. Probably the OG in Val d'Isère.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit pretentious. Let's be frank, but
perfect for you. So.
Hey, it's quite fun to dip your toe into a world where you definitely don't belong. So yeah, I do enjoy it, and goggles down so no one can so I don't feel quite so self-conscious when I get on the table.
And I'm who is the best ski racer of all time?
love and hate this question, because those of you that listen to the ski racing podcast will know whenever I try to make a selection, I cannot do it very quickly. So Marcel Hirscher, for me, has got to be up there. Ingemar Stenmark, you can't get away from that man's like winning record of so few races, so many wins. Lindsey Vonn of a similar ilk in terms of winning loads of races. Michaela Schifrin, I think, will undoubtedly become the greatest ski racer of all time, because I just don't think you're going to be able to get away from the amount of wins that she surely will rack up in her career. It's not good, she's not going to win it by she won't only just take 87 that Stenmark's got. She won't sort of do 89 or 90. She's going to properly kick on from that. So I think she will be the greatest of all time. I don't think she's quite there yet. I would the Norwegians, Q Sormot, those guys are legends.
This isn't a starting 11.
I can't help it. Herman Meyer, just legend.
I'm going to have to press you for an answer.
I'm going to go Hirscher.
Hirscher. Okay. Right, that's locked in now, and we're going to hold it to you
forever. No, next week when I talk about it to somebody else, it'll be somebody else.
Yeah. Your most memorable memory of ski racing.
Is that how I do it when I'm talking? Do I say memorable memory? I don't think
I wrote that quite quickly. But I will also say that every single time your guest does also turn around and go, "Do you mean of ski racing or of my ski racing?" And you get that question every single time. Yeah. So your
which one do you mean, Tor? This is a terribly worded question.
Yeah, well, funny that. I would say from your ski racing.
Okay.
We've already covered that previously. So let's talk about ski racing in general. What's the most memorable kind of memory?
Memorable memory of ski racing. I'd say one of my most memorable memories of memorizing ski racing in my memory would be, I think one of them high on my list is Alan Baxter's bronze medal. Yeah. Regardless of the controversy that goes around that, or what should be the lack of controversy, let's be frank, that goes around that, I would say that is a huge memory for me, because what year was that? 2002. So I was young-ish, and entering my sort of, I think I was at my first or second FIS race, I think, and that's something that really sticks out in the memories of watching him skiing down with that, coloured in a Scottish flag on his head. Yeah. So it just looked like he was dipped his head in some blue paint
and a full headband and earrings.
I mean, we all know Alan Baxter's a pretty cool guy. So a bit of a ledge. But him, or actually some of the crashes, like watching. I think it was Peekaboo Street, crossing a finish line with one leg facing the wrong way, and one facing the right way is something that that burns in the memory. And it's not because I'd like to see somebody in pain, just because of that willingness to put yourself on the line like that so many ski racers do every day, or certainly every weekend when it comes to race days. I think that's something that lives on, that sort of willingness to put yourself on the line.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Complete the sentence: when I'm not skiing, you'll find me.
Talking about skiing, probably, but let's try and move skiing out of it. I'd say probably walking the dog is something that I like to take time. Me and the wife go out and walk the dog quite a lot, and just, I don't know, it sounds a bit hippie, but sort of get back to what's important, which isn't anything else that anybody else is doing. So walking the dog, driving my car, getting on the motorbike, going to the beach. Just some sort of normality, world. Give me some.
All whilst speaking about ski racing, obviously. What's your worst moment on skis?
I knocked myself out skiing with my eyes closed when I was a kid. That's pretty bad. I was in Morzine.
Not recommended, by the way.
Don't do it. No, I was in Morzine, and I was it was like a really steep bit that goes into a really flat bit, and it's a really long flat bit. And I got a bit bored, so I'm tucking along and stick my head down and just sort of waiting for the flat bit to end. And all of a sudden, there wasn't anything under my feet, and I skied into a tree. So that one's quite a good one.
That is a good one.
But yeah, I don't know. Crashing's always is never fun. Rupturing ankle ligaments at World Champs was not great, and in the nets. But I don't know. It does tend to be crashing. Those are a couple of good ones. Or breaking fracturing a couple of vertebrae in my neck was pretty good, and ski cross landing on my head. That's fun.
Yeah, you shouldn't have done that.
No.
And then your final question that you normally put in is: you're on a road trip to the Alps. Who are the 3 people you're going to take with you?
Oh, that's quite a tough one. If I'm going like celebrities, I'd take Hermann Maier, because that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Mostly because I do love a German accent, so like Austrian German, I do like a German accent. So listening to him talking ski stories would be fun. I'd probably take somebody like, I'd probably take Mark Telling or Jan Kachowski, just because those two are, if you do know them, you'll know what I mean by they're a bit weird, but kind of fun to hang out with. I would say the wife, I mean, she's sitting quite close by, so I have to sort of chuck her in the mix. Let's say she's already there. And I would probably take, is it wrong if I say I take the dog with me in the car? I'll take the dog.
Take the dog. It's technically your question, so so fine. Yeah, I'll take the plane, mate. Don't worry about that.
No, you're there, mate. You're throwing the arrival party for me.
Just before we grab some questions from our lovely audience, so at the National Snow Show in October, there will be a ski racing podcast live for the second time,
yes,
which is really exciting. Why do you think snow shows are so important to have in the UK for the ski and snowboarding community?
I think, well, for me, one of them is nostalgia. I used to love going to them as a kid, mostly because I ran around like a little toe rag and like trying to grab any free stuff. Stickers, loved stickers. Which kid doesn't love stickers? But I would run around all the little the vendors or whatever and grab stickers, and they would end up being on my bed at home, just Rossignol stickers, Chamonix stickers, atomic sticker, just stickers. So one of those, but I think it engages and it brings together people that love the same thing. I've spoken to the snow show guys about it, but some of it can tend to be a little too salesy, and the stuff that the snow show guys are looking at doing is trying to make sure that it's a bit more wholesome than just walking down and somebody going, hey, you want to come on a skiing holiday to my resort and something like that. But I think they're really important because they bring so many like-minded people together, and and especially at the beginning of the season, just brings a bit of buzz about the ski industry in the UK, because we don't have our own place to do it, really, apart from obviously the indoor places like Hemel and stuff like that. We don't really get that opportunity to have all the same people. It's such a great place to go. You see the same faces, like in terms of the guys running the stands, from all the sort of vendors there and that. And it's really nice to go and just be around people that love the same stuff, walking around, pretend little chalets and watching some kids do some twizzles and upside down stuff on some crazy jumps. Love it. But it's important. I honestly think it's really important that we have these opportunities for people to go and share in a similar love. It brings good feelings.
There you go. You heard it from Ed first. So questions from the audience. We got: what advice would you give to a young racer? This could go on, audience. So
yeah, I'll try not to talk too much. I would say. Sounds a bit. I'd say grow a thick skin, because and be ready for setbacks, because sport, and obviously talking about ski racing, is tough. It's tough on the body and it's tough on the mind. But it's that determination and dedication that will bring you through. And I look and I think of somebody like Dave Riding as a prime example of that. I think, is Dave the most naturally talented ski racer in the world? No. And I think he would hold his hands up and say that. But does Dave want it more than or as much as everybody else? Hell yeah, he does. And I think somebody like Dave has got through to where he is because he's so dedicated and works so hard and has that sort of classic mindset of a sporting great. And I'm not, again, blowing smoke up Dave's backside, but where the best of the best in whatever sport you do are dedicated and single-minded, and sometimes people get a bad rap for being single-minded or branded selfish. But I think if you really want it, you have to be single-minded, and you have to be able to take the rough with the smooth, because that's part of sporting life, when it comes from injuries or whether it comes from external setbacks or even setbacks yourself, and being able to overcome those and sort of work on a dogged plan of being able to set these little goals and being able to sort of drag yourself out of tricky situations. But it's that determination, I think, is probably, I would say, that is number one trait that needs to be learned.
There you go. Some good advice right there. Did you, and you have covered this slightly, did you have any injuries?
Yeah, I had a few. Yeah, a fair few. I had ankle surgery just before I switched to ski cross, ruptured some ankle ligaments in racing Garmisch at World Champs. I had a hip hop when I was 20 years old that put me out of action for 20 months, basically. So I tore some ligaments in my hip. I fractured a couple of vertebrae in my neck, which wasn't great. But I actually didn't realize I'd done it straight away, because I'll go into a little story now, Todd. Sorry, mate. You can't go anywhere yet. But I was racing.
I don't know where to go.
Yeah, to be fair, neither does anybody. So you don't click off your screens. No, so I was racing ski cross in Arosa, and really flat light, and so in ski cross especially, you have to work really hard the backside of the sort of artificial terrains on the backside of some of these rollers, and I worked the back of this roller really hard and just got caught my weight too far back, which meant that I was ending up sort of sitting on my bindings, and I then went off into a kicker, because the kicker was like straight away after this roll, so it's like roller into a kicker, and I just got my weight wrong with some flat light, didn't quite read the terrain very well, and ended up doing like half a backflip and landing on the top of my back, sort of bottom of my neck, and ended up in the nets. And so this course worker comes up, and they're like talking, are you okay? Are you okay? And I said, yeah, I think I'm okay. I just need you to take my skis off. And they're like, no, you shouldn't move. Don't move. Like the skis are like caught above my head, like in the nets. I was like, just take off my skis. They're like, no, we can't touch you. Wait for the doctor. I'm like, get these skis off of me. And so eventually this person takes off my skis, and then I sort of turn around and sit down, like sort of upright. And then the doctor comes down. They're like, okay, don't move. Are you okay? And like when you crash, whether you're ski racing or whether you're just skiing or snowboarding or whatever, you sort of do like a mental sort of checklist of like,
yeah,
you sort of work your way down your body, don't you? Like,
you make sure everything's still there.
Like,
have I got my arm?
Arms feel okay, knee feels okay, hips, everything sort of feels okay. I'm a bit stiff in my neck. I've just landed on it. Got a bit of a sore hip, all of this sort of stuff. But I thought I was okay. And so I was like, no, I think I'm okay. And the guy's like, okay, we'll just get the blood wagon. I was like, I am not getting in a blood wagon. You can get that thing out. I'm not doing it. And they're like, no, just sit there. I'm like, nope. And so I ended up like clicking on my skis and like managing to sort of slide away from this doctor. I'm like, I'm getting out of here, goodbye. And then like sliding down, got to the sort of finish area, which was not that far down the hill. And sort of everything, obviously the adrenaline pumping, and I've had a few crashes before, but I kind of thought that I was okay. And I'd done this sort of, got to the finish, and then obviously the adrenaline started to go and everything started to like just tense up, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I'm quite sore here and here. I ended up going to the doctor, and they scanned my, I had a sore back. I didn't really talk about my neck because my back was quite sore and my hip was quite sore. like mostly sore. My neck was just a bit iffy, and so they scanned my back, x-rayed my back and my hip, and they're like, no, that looks okay. Your back looks a bit wonky, but that may be normal. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And eventually, I'm then back in the hotel, like hobbling around, not looking very good, just really, really sort of eking my way around the hotel, like dragging a leg pretty much. And it just so happened I had a friend in a neighboring resort who was flying home, and he was like, heard about my crash and all this sort of stuff. And he was like, look, I'm due to fly home in a couple of days. Do you need a hand getting home? I was like, well, I've got my car here, so I can't drive. So I think I'm going to be stuck here for a while. He was like, look, I won't fly home. I'll drive you in your car home. So Jamie Page, big ups to Jamie, just like sacked off his flight and basically chauffeured me home. And then I went to the doctor when I got back, and they were like, okay, and by this time everything else had calmed down. My neck was still quite sore. So I went to the ski team doctor, and they're like, okay, we need to get you scanned again. So when it got scanned, and they were like, oh, look, you've got 2 vertebrae that have got healing fractures. I'm like, okay, good.
Oh, wow.
They're like, don't do anything. I mean, it wasn't like the main bulky bit, it wasn't the actual vertebrae bit. It's the wingy bits on the side of your vertebrae. So not
you
the
don't
thing
need those anyway, Ed. So just
exactly. So it wasn't like my actual vertebrae that was close to my spine was broken or anything. It was just the wingy bits at the end. They're like, you've got 2 healing fractures there. So be really careful. I was like, well, I've driven home and I've been doing a static bike. Is that good? And stop doing that. That was it.
Unbelievable.
Fear of blood wagons, basically.
Well, I mean, yeah, the background being that the blood wagons is it's a bit of an ego hit, isn't it, to take the blood wagon?
I mean, I've touched wood, never been in one, and I've zero sort of thoughts of ever getting in one. So I'll ski down one leg, I think, before I get in one of those bad boys.
Yeah. Well, that is all we've got time for this evening. Thank you very much, Ed Drake. So just to recap, go to theskiracingpodcast.com to find links to the podcast, to the YouTube channel, and to put your predictions in. Make sure you watch Charlie Guest compete tomorrow morning in the slalom at the World Champs in Cortina. And of course, Dave Riding, hopefully taking home maybe a medal on Sunday.
And Billy and Laurie.
And there we go. Yes, absolutely.
And maybe Alex Tilley in the slalom as well. Sorry, Todd. Carry on.
Keep an eye on that. But yeah, thank you, Ed. I appreciate you taking the time, mate.
No worries. Thank you very much.
See you later, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.